Welcome to the Hacking Your Health podcast with Ben Canning and Dave Kennedy. Two guys heading out to hack body, mind, business, and beyond. We are here to provide a single source, bullshit-free guide to understanding your body and how you can live better for longer.
Hacking Your Health listeners, just want to say a special thanks to everybody that is listening to this podcast. If you're enjoying what we're doing, please share us. We're all over at We Hack Health on Twitter, Discord, Instagram, you name it, pretty much everywhere. But your support, your sharing of your experiences, this community is what drives us, what drives this podcast, and what allows us to be able to do this every single week for you. So if you're enjoying what we're doing, please share us out there. The more people we have to impact, the more people we have to help. That's our mission. That's our goal. And that's the whole thing about Hacking Your Health. Thanks, everybody.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. I'm Ben Canning.
I'm Dave Kennedy.
And this is Hacking Your Health podcast, episode 80. What a time to be alive, eh?
Episode 80. Look at that. It feels like we just started this yesterday. Not really, but...
I know, right? What's going on with you? How's your week?
It's been going good. It's been so busy. It's one of those, weeks where you're like struggling to find time to actually get training in. And that's
sound like you.
It doesn't, right? And I normally have, very specific, time set, but because of how everything's kind of fallen in line and just, my singing Orange Theory person and everything else, it's been a little bit.
We need to give everybody an update on that because that was pretty much what the entire podcast was about last week. So what's the update?
So, Monday I went to a different studio, which, ends up being around the exact same amount of time to drive to one to the other. But the issue is like I really like the trainers that are there. I like the staff. I'm comfortable with the people that there was. So I kind of have like my own area. So switching kind of sucks. And this is a whole different area, different experience. So it's like,
I would say that what you mean is they're used to you and what you need is probably more of the case.
Yeah, but I mean, like you get routine, right? Like you go and you hang a left here, you do this. Everything's all about routine, especially when it comes to consistency and your fitness training, right? And so when you change that and you make it different, it changes the whole experience, right? And I had a good time there. And actually, I will admit there was somebody there that was faster than me. And the dude
so that's why you're not going back.
Fast. No, that's not the reason. That is the reason. 100%. I'm not going back because the guy was fast. I've never seen anything like this. The guy, I was at like 3.6 miles. The guy was at like 4.1 miles. And he was just cruising at like 12 miles an hour the entire time for like 23 minutes. I was like, oh my God, like that's crazy. And, like rail dude, like chicken legs, but that's totally fine. So I'll take the blend where I'm strong and fast, but, I can't quite do that type of stuff.
I think what you're trying to say is he's built for running.
He's built for running, right?
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, and it's totally cool. That's his objective, and that's totally fine. And he did great, and he kicked my ass. So it was, it was a little bit of a humbling experience. It's like, oh shit, there's somebody here that is actually beating me. And I was trying to. I was hauling ass, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna die. But no, but so what I ended up coming to the conclusion, I went to Orange Theory, my normal place today. And for those that didn't listen to last week's podcast, there's a new trainer at my Orange Theory that he's a great guy, like him a lot, but he sings at the top of his lungs every single song, and it's just like the most distracting thing ever. And I actually started like kind of like analyzing why it bothers me so much. And I think it's an uncomfortable thing where you have people like doing something in public that isn't necessarily normal, maybe. And that kind of like throws me off. So like I wouldn't just randomly sing in public. First of all, you don't want me randomly singing at all, ever. But second, I think if I were to do that, I would have like a fear of that type of thing. So maybe it just spawns something. Anyways, I just don't like it. So I think I got a good game plan now, which is I'm going to do my push day. Well, push days were on Mondays, so I do hit and push. So I'm going to do Orange Theory in the afternoon now, push days in the morning, which I actually prefer because I can give more energy in the morning to push and then, do my cardio in the afternoon. So I think it's a good balance, but it's been a good week. I did get all my training in. I did a late night lift. What was it? think it was Tuesday, I did a late night lift. No, so today's Wednesday. So it was Monday. I did a late night lift because I was busy all day at work. Tuesday, got home from an all day meeting that was basically sitting the entire day. And got home and got my lift right in. It was a solid lift. Although I will say I took, so Redcon 1 came out with a new pre-workout, and it's called Total War Black Ops. And, listen, it sounds badass, right? It is the most intense high stim one that I've ever tried, and I will never try it again. Like, it jacked me up so bad. Like, in digestive tracts, I was in the bathroom like 30 times. I was sweating profusely. I thought I might die. So, I'm like, I can handle 300 to 400, milligrams of caffeine without issue. Whatever's in that was like liquid cocaine or something. It was insane. So it was intense. So I did a great workout, but like after I started off with back squats, and my second, loading set that I was doing, I was like dripping in sweat by then. And it usually doesn't happen until like halfway through the workout. Man, I was drenched, like sweat everywhere. I was profusely sweating everywhere you could possibly imagine. So I will not be taking that pre-workout ever again. And I have 3 extra bottles, so I'll ship you some if you want it, because I'm
actually on the website right now, and I don't know whether it's a positive or a negative, but they don't have it in the UK on the UK website at all.
It's probably banned internationally. And,
it probably is. It probably is.
Yeah. How about you? How you doing, man?
Well, number one, my legs are sore. I don't know if I mentioned that.
Well, that's what happens when you work out with Helmy. So it's to be expected.
Do you know
it's
what?
Funny because you sent me a text message. You're like, I'm currently going to do legs day with Helmy, and I instantly think Ben is going to be complaining about legs for the next 4 days. So
correct, absolutely correct. Do you know what? Like, Helmy's the sort of person, like obviously a good friend of mine, but not somebody that like I feel like I talk to all the time. And then every so often, like we'll chat quite a lot, and he's like, I come down to the gym, and I'm like, fuck. I'm like, no,
we know what this means.
Yeah. And he was like, what's your training like? And I was like, I'm free on Tuesday. And he was like, leg day. I'm like, fuck. So anyway, long story short, we went down and trained legs. And do you know what? It was two things I will say. Number one, it was good to catch up with him. To update on Helmy for anybody who's concerned, because we all know he's a big boy. Let me get my calculator out so I can tell you in pounds for your understanding. So he is currently 108 kilos, which is 237 pounds. Bear in mind, he's still relatively lean. And his goal at the minute is to get to 115 pounds, which is 115 kilos, which is 253 pounds. Oh my so he's eating like 6,500 calories per day. And I was chatting to Luke about it last night, because he asked me how many calories worth is Cocoa Pops. And I was like, absolutely none. So Helmy's diet of 6,500 calories consists of pretty much just chicken, potatoes, rice, tuna, prawns, more rice, some granola, Greek yogurt,
more rice,
and that is it. That is all he eats. Like that, like maybe 6 or 7 different foods. But yes, it was good to train. It was good to catch up and just really see what was going on with him. And I think I'm going to try and schedule at least 1, if not 2. I don't even know why I'm doing it myself, but 1, if not 2 training sessions with him per week. I think we sort of worked out logistically that we could probably get in line. So leg day every Tuesday, we could probably fit in, and then potentially an upper body day.
I find that working out with friends or doing something different motivates you differently, I think, in a lot of ways. So, I mean, I think it's definitely a good thing to go with a partner or go with a friend that especially somebody as big boy as Helmy. So.
But even like you'll know from being there, there's no like, he will not let you away with anything, which is good sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, you'll know yourself sometimes whenever you're, say you need to get 13 reps at something and you get to 15, like that's good. Like Helmy will tell you, you will just do more. So it's good to have that sort of push.
Same with you, by the way, too. Like, I know what I'm doing, I'm like, oh, I'm good. And then you're like 3 more. And I'm like, what? Like, seriously? And then I do 3 more, it's that additional motivation, or like, hey, you got more, reserve, you could do it. So pushing yourself harder, I think definitely makes a big difference. Yeah.
So I'm going to try and get him. Well, I'm definitely going to do at least legs. So you'll probably hear me complain, I would say 75% of the time for having sore legs. And then we'll try and get an upper body session in as well. But it was good. I'm going to go down tomorrow and record some content just for like setup videos that have been requested within the client group for the mainframe and stuff like that. So all is good on that front. It was good. Like I said, to catch up with Helmy, my legs are sore. Like I can feel hamstrings not in a good place. But aside from that, I've got absolutely zero complaints. Things are good on this end.
You know, it's interesting. Jeff Nippard, who we've, spoken about on this podcast before, big fan of his videos, does a lot of the breakdown of science, nutrition, and, applying those concepts to, weightlifting and weight training. If you haven't checked him out, good channel to watch on YouTube. He just released one recently for it was a legs day program, and it was for free. And he went through, form techniques and rep ranges. And what was really cool that I liked about it was it was flexible to if your goals were strength or hypertrophy. So strength, or i.e. muscle size or mass. And, we've talked about this concept before, but if you want to train for strength, you need to lift heavy. You need to lift very heavy. You need to be in the 70 to 90% rep range, a 1 rep max range, and put your body under some extreme tension for strength in order to, hit those fast twitch fibers that allow you to increase muscle strength. Now, hypertrophy is different. That's more on the volume side of the house, where you're doing more volume and kind of exhausting your muscles, which is where you get the muscle size, not necessarily strength. So you'll see these folks that are just absolutely jacked, but they may only be able to do a 400 or 500 pound deadlift. So still strong, but not like strong if you're training to be strong. There's a difference between training to be strong and just being average strong and looking big and strong, right? And what I like about Nippard's programs, he's more of a power builder. So he focuses on strength and the hypertrophy aspects of things. But his program was really neat because, it blended both of those, which is the power building side, right? And gave you options if you just want to do more bodybuilding or more strength or a mixture of both. And what was interesting is, as I was going through that, I was also looking at there's a new podcast that I've been listening to as of late, and not to tell people about other podcasts, because we're obviously the only one that you
is it Huberman Labs podcast? No,
no, it's called the Mind Pump podcast, and the guys over there, what I like about some of the things that they do is they also break down some of the science studies as well around physical training. So very similar to like a Nippard type of thing. One of the interesting tidbits that I learned from them is a recent study came out around the difference between doing leg curls laying down. So, laying down in your stomach and then having a leg curl machine that you kick back, or if you're using bands, those types of things. Or if sitting and doing leg curls had a more benefit on muscle hypertrophy, growth, or strength. And what was interesting is they did a study on that, on laying down versus sitting up. And the sitting up motion actually had a 54% increase in muscle strength and hypertrophy just by sitting up versus laying down. So you gain more muscle and strength by doing leg curls sitting up than you do lying down. So if your focus is getting as much gains as possible, you want to be doing leg curls sitting up, right? Now, interesting enough, I prefer laying down, as a method. I feel I get a better contraction of the muscle. I feel like I'm more controlled. So that was surprising to me, but they did a lot of randomized studies, controlled studies on those, and we're able to see a massive difference between sitting down and standing up. And they went into to why that happens. It basically is how it's contracting your muscle. You're basically taking the strain off of your entire leg and focusing specifically on those individualized muscle groups. And so you're not able to use other muscles to kind of engage to go and do it. So you're putting more of the strain on the muscle itself.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it makes sense, because if you're sat in a machine, generally the majority of the machines will have some sort of pad that sits on your quads, so you're super locked in. So essentially, your hamstrings are the only part of your body that can do your work. Yeah. Versus if you're lying, there's a lot more movement in it, and you'll probably find, and I've done it many times myself, like whenever you start to struggle and you get to that fully contracted position, like your glutes will start to lift, so you'll start to pull from that. So it can't come from other places. But I would say, if you really want to get jacked hamstrings, just go to Helmy's gym and train with him. You have to do both. So we started with land hamstring curls, and we finished with seated single leg hamstring curls.
Oh, that sounds horrible.
Yeah, so that's why my hamstrings feel the way I'm actually feeling them right now. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense, because I was going to ask why, but now they said that it does make a lot more sense, is that you can isolate the muscle a lot more. Yeah,
and those types of exercises are great. I did his program yesterday just to kind of try it out, and it was I didn't feel like there was enough volume. I'm used to doing a lot more volume, so that was interesting. So I definitely tacked on more leg extensions and some other things.
You did the workout twice.
I pretty much did the workout twice, but at the same time, the concepts that they use, which I really like, and I get in my own head sometimes. I think when I'm lifting, which is, to do, more isn't always better in every case of what you're doing, and focusing more on form and focusing more on, hitting that 3 to 5 rep range, especially if you're looking for strength, and not getting into the 7 or 8 to 10 to 12, rep range for strength specifically, and then your supplemental, workout routines getting into the 10 to 12 or 10 to 15 rep range for muscle size and fatigue for the size. So, it was a good breakdown of it. Just gave me a little bit of a different, extension, thing to do, but I'll be going back to my normal routine that I enjoy. I think I do definitely do more volume and definitely do more strength as part of it.
Yeah, but it's good to sort of try it, and obviously we listen to these things to try and improve the things that we do. So if you pick up a tip from it, you want to try it, like it makes a lot of sense rather than just listening to the stuff and be like, all right, okay, cool concept. What's next?
Yeah.
I actually just clicked and I recognize one of the guys. So I think I've definitely seen that Sal Di Stefano guy on another podcast before. So I'll check it out.
Yep, it was good. Yeah, it has some good information. I just see little, YouTube shorts here and there from them. I follow their channel, and then they have a podcast. I tried listening to the podcast. I think it's just like way too long, so I kind of space out on some of the stuff. So, but the YouTube shorts that I've been getting have some good data in it that kind of summarizes them out and then kind of puts in the highlights, which I like. So kind of the Cliff Notes side of it.
Gives you the best bits of it.
Right.
You listen to the whole 2-hour podcast in 7 minutes.
Right. Well, I mean, some of them are like intensely long, but it's, there's usually 2 hours. Some of them are like 46 minutes. Some of them are like 3 hours, but anyways, again, good stuff. So thought I'd share that. Last thing I'll say is that I'm very happy with progress. So it's interesting, up calories. I definitely slacked on my calorie counting a week ago while I was traveling and did not properly record. Back on the train again.
You got told off. I did tell you off for it.
You did. I appreciate that. That's why we're here. But back on track with that. And what's interesting is, I feel like I'm eating more now than I was when I wasn't tracking. And I'm down to 225 again. So I was up to 228, 229, and I'm down to 225. I'm like, son of a bitch, I don't understand. Eat more, lose more, don't get it. But it's fine. But I have no quantitative or, qualitative, information to be able to represent that, because I probably was eating more calories, just didn't recognize it. But, definitely still lean, definitely getting stronger, which is the whole intent, right? Increase calories, slightly, be in a surplus and continue to put on muscle mass and maybe a little bit of byproduct of fat, but ultimately staying lean as we go through it, which has been good. So I'm really happy with the check-in photos. I can tell by the photos.
Number one, spoiler alert, I don't get to look at your check-in photos when I open your check-in. I get them the day before, but I can definitely tell we're not at the stage we're adding any unwanted fat tissue at the minute. And for anybody who's been following the, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll send Ben. It's when I have okay, so we have to take weekly check-in photos, as part of this, and I literally, try to get the best pose that I possibly can, but it's consistent. It's got to be, I do it the same time of the week, in the morning after Orange Theory. And I try to get, the same type of lighting, everything else. So you can see the consistency across, the abs and, the muscles and everything else that's going on. And, so when I get a really good photo, and I'll take 15 photos and try to pick the best one out of the 15. This one today was just off the hook. I was like, I gotta send this to Ben right ahead of time. And I've done that a few times, but this one I was just like, oh, I gotta send you this one. Look at this. Look good.
That's good. That's we want you to be excited about your progress for this, because it's something that people sort of shy away from and don't like, but it's obviously part of the process. We have to get I wonder how we could do it. We could set up somebody, Helmy, it would be Helmy, to take you through some bodybuilder poses to get the proper poses for each check-in photos.
So it's funny you mentioned that, because I have no idea what I'm doing when it comes to posing at all. And I'm like, yeah, I have no clue. So what are you talking about? You do all the photo shoots and stuff. But
No.
People are
poses are different.
How do I show the wings? I could feel the wings when I go like this, but how do I show the wings, when I'm going back, And,
but even I've had Helmy take my progress photos before, and he's like, no, you need to do this. And he's saying words that make sense to me. And I'm like, how do I move my body in that position?
So,
and it's
so I think a good
almost
guest,
opposing things.
Getting Helmy to come on, not the podcast, but to do a video for you on
Okay,
posing
yeah,
techniques would be awesome for the mainframe.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah, I can do it in the morning because I'll be down there in the morning.
Yeah.
But yes, for anybody who's been following along about my weight journey from the past 3 weeks, so whenever I left,
this is so funny, by the way.
whenever I left to go to America, I was 209, 210 pounds. Whenever I got back, I was 221. Everybody will be glad to know on Monday, I was back down to 209. So I lost like 11 or 12 pounds last week, and it has sort of stabilized. I have set a target. Let me just do my conversion here because I can't talk in kilos. Before I start my sort of travel up again, I've got an event. Matt's Get Shit Done Day is on the 10th of March. So the goal is to get to 200 pounds. That'll be the end of the mini cut, which will be like 20 pounds, 22 pounds in like 3.5 weeks, and then begin to creep calories back up again for our adventure in Colorado. So anyway, today we want to talk about lessons that we have learned, mistakes that we have made, bad advice that we have been given along the way. Again, this sort of actually came off the back of the conversation that I had with Luke last night. He was talking to me about something about raw vegetables, and I went into a whole conversation about how a coach told me before that I had to eat all my vegetables raw and what a shit show that was for about 6 to 8 months of my life. So I thought it would be good to sort of share things. The number one, show that I haven't always done things the way that I do them now. And I have thankfully made those mistakes, and I do not pass that information off to anybody else. But I just think it's interesting to sort of see. I'd be interested to see like things that you have done and been told and tried, and things that don't work or haven't worked over the years. Obviously, I know quite a lot of them, but I think if we format them into one episode, I think it'd be beneficial from people. So I'll start, because the one about the raw veg was insane. So essentially, whenever I was training initially, essentially I went to the biggest guy in the gym. He was a WBFF pro bodybuilder, and I was not the biggest guy in the gym, let's say. So I sat down with him and just asked him about training and whatever else. And he got into like a super specific meal plan, like to the point we were having conversations about recipes for every single meal. And I was like, this is way beyond what I need to do. But anyway, long story short, he always recommended that I ate my vegetables raw. And obviously me coming to this guy for advice was like, okay, I mean, if you tell me who. So you picture whenever I was doing my meal prep, I was like grating sweet potato and like grating broccoli, and every meal that I had like 250 grams of raw vegetables. So it took me like 60 minutes to eat. I don't know if you've ever tried to eat raw broccoli, but insane. I definitely would not recommend doing that. He was like, just put a bit of like balsamic vinegar and soy on it, it'll be fine. And I'm like sitting with a Tupperware, like the biggest Tupperware that I could find, with like one small chicken breast in it and all this like grated up tiny raw veg. I would not recommend. Good jaw pump by the end of it though.
I think that by the way, eating raw vegetables, I mean, aside from like tomatoes or maybe celery, stuff like that, I'm not a huge fan. Like broccoli's okay raw, but I won't eat like a ton of it. You throw it in like some really delicious fattening, ranch dressing, not that fat-free light stuff. It's got to be like the proper stuff, proper stuff. That's not bad. But no, I think I think one of the, I think there's a difference between things that I was taught prior to training and things that I've learned as I've done things properly, that I've had to tweak because of my body or who I am or what I do. Right. So I think there's a difference between those. Like, someone will say, oh, well, drinking a glass of alcohol or a glass of wine a day is healthy for you. Whereas all the studies clearly show that is not the case. There was like an old study back in like 2008 done. And, it wasn't a controlled study. It was all over the place. The data has since been like completely thrown out the window. And there's been like 500 additional supplemental studies that show any type of alcohol whatsoever is terrible for you from a cancer perspective, longevity impact. It hits you, recovery and everything else, muscle hypertrophy and growth. So, if you're drinking alcohol, cool. And I'm not going to judge on it, but it's not the greatest thing for you. And the stipulation that just having one glass a day is actually healthy for you is not accurate in any way, shape, or form. So that was one of the myths that got busted for me.
Two things. Number one, you need to sort of, I guess, delve a bit deeper into who ran these studies. Do you know what I mean? Was it backed by an alcohol company that would have benefited from people drinking alcohol? And the second thing is, I often find that like people will try and find something to justify their behavior. So if it's somebody who likes having a glass of wine every day, they'd be like, oh, but this one study that I read from 1979 that they have fucking printed on their wall because it proves that they can have, they'll sort of try and like hone in on that, no, this is the way, instead of like actually keeping up to date with, because I mean, even like the amount of things and studies that come out and data that has changed in the past 80 episodes that we've done, like there are a lot of things that have been defunct, let's say.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what I think the coolest part about doing this podcast, but also listening to like Huberman Labs and other places, is that, that while today we believe certain things are one way, we learn that maybe it's not that same way down the road, especially as new studies come out, we learn more about our bodies. And that's, I think the cool part is, the things that we do time and time again is going to work. Consistency, discipline that we talk about, going to the gym, strength versus hypertrophy or muscle growth. These are all various things that are constants that we know work, right? But how do you maximize that, or how do you do things differently? Like the study today on the, increasing, 50 plus percentage points on, hamstring, curls, leg curls. That's a big difference. That's a huge difference. 54% increase is a huge difference versus, doing things a different way. So just making that minor modification, you get, some pretty substantial gains in that. So I think, the cool part about the podcast so far is that, we're always learning these new things as it comes along, and through trial and error, you learn different ways that you're doing things, maybe not correct. And, for me, looking back at when I first started versus now, it's been interesting because I've had to curtail a lot of my training around some of the reoccurring ailments that I have, most specifically around my back. And I didn't really realize that my back was as much of a problem as it was until it progressively started to continue to get worse. And my mindset is consistency. So when I have a back ailment and I can't be consistent, well, I say I'm going to be consistent and I'm going to push through that back ailment, right? Which is not the right.
Not what not to do. Do not
this
do
is
that.
not what not to do, right? And if you actually look at a lot of professional bodybuilders or people powerlifters, you can see this consistent theme. Ronnie Coleman's a great example. You look at why he had so many major issues. For one, obviously the guy was just incredibly strong and a bodybuilder. I mean, probably the most amazing genetic specimen I think that we've ever seen in that type of field. I mean, most bodybuilders are not strong like Ronnie Coleman, but Ronnie was probably the strongest we've ever seen. And, physically had won, Mr. Universe, several times, from a bodybuilding perspective. So, or Mr. Mr. Olympia, there we go. Mr. Olympia. So
8 times, I think he won.
Insane. But, what was interesting when you talk about how he actually got his injury, it started from back pain, that he's like, screw this, I'm just going to keep going. And then eventually, because he didn't listen to his body, really caused some major damage down the road. And I think that's a good testament here is that, there's a difference between like annoying pain and actual pain. I was actually listening to, I think it was a Dr. Attia podcast on the drive, and he was saying that our backs are actually overly sensitive, and that a lot of the back pain that we experience actually isn't a problem. But because we have so many nerve receptors and things that kind of like cross paths, and, obviously our spine is connected to that. So a very sensitive area. So it's kind of like overly sensitive to anything that's out there. And if you actually get down to seeing how the back works, a lot of the times, our aching back pain isn't necessarily a major problem. And it's just, something that isn't necessarily broken, but obviously you want to get the swelling down and things like that. That's not going to cause long-term damage. But for me, my lower left back has always been a problematic area, and I'd always push through, and it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. So finally, I decided to address it. And one, a couple ways of doing that. One was definitely through form and technique, making sure that I was doing the proper lifts, but also adjusting how I am as a person. So I'm tall, I'm 6'4". So conventional deadlifts for me are very taxing on my lower back and my spinal erectors. And so moving to something like a sumo or a trap bar was a lot better for me, maintaining neutral grip, alleviating some of the lower back components of that. And with sumo, you have the ability to stay upright a lot more than you do traditional or conventional, because you're not having to bend all the way down as you do it. And then, incorporating things like wagon wheels or, block pulls to, keep you elevated so that you're not putting all of that weight on your lower back. That was an absolute game changer for me, that I could work around it. And to be perfectly honest, I haven't had, a back issue in over a year, because I've been able to make and course correct based off of issues that I have, in my body that, either I have to go to surgery to fix, which I don't want to do, or I can just work around it and strengthen those muscles at the same time and do things properly and, be fine lifting and still continue to lift, heavy weights and things that I want to accomplish.
Yeah. It's those small things that are part of the reason why I enjoy the form check videos so much, because it can be the smallest thing, or just change the height of something, or even a different internal cue or something that can totally transform the movement as a whole. I'm just going to segue here to talk a little bit more about Ronnie Coleman, because I pulled up some of his stats, and holy shit. Number one, I don't know if you've ever seen any photos of him whenever he still worked as a policeman, as a police officer. So I think even still like 2 or 3 years after being Mr. Olympia, like he still worked as a police officer. But anyway, famous lifts: 800-pound deadlift, 800-pound squat, 500-pound bench press, dumbbell bench press, 200 pounds, military press, 315 pounds. Absolutely.
Military press, 315 pounds, for crying out loud.
leg press, 2,400 pounds. 8 reps. What the fuck?
Oh my God. It's crazy.
Military press, actually, just to go back to that one, 315 pounds for 12 reps. So not just like one.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Anyway, total side note. Yeah, crazy. Absolute insane. Just like you said, absolutely insane genetic freak, but very funny seeing him whenever he's like in his police officer uniform. And honestly, if he had a stop, I'd have been like, yep, take me, whatever you need. Another piece of awful advice that I got actually from the same person that got me to eat the raw vegetables was for breakfast, I used to have to eat 8 whole. Well, number one, I would like to sort of take a minute to say being on such a strict meal plan was not what I needed by any stretch of the imagination. So anybody who feels like they need a meal plan, I would advise against it, because you'll end up hitting the list of 10 to 12 or however many foods is on that, regardless of if you're the sort of person who eat the same thing day in and day out. Like, it just becomes absolutely nutless. But anyway, that aside, my breakfast, and I think I've mentioned this before, my breakfast was 8 whole eggs and 1 whole avocado every morning.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if you've ever tried to eat 8 eggs, but like it took me a while to think to get through what was the most palatable way to do it. So was it boiled eggs, scrambled eggs, fried eggs, whatever else? I would say that probably boiled eggs was the one, but yeah, eating 8 eggs every morning and an avocado is way too much. Way too much.
Well, first of all, avocados are terrible. Yeah. But second, that's a lot of eggs. It's interesting. I always hear.
I would say it's probably about, I don't know, 1,100 calories. Just
got to be
that one meal alone.
It's interesting. I always hear, about, like bodybuilders and weightlifters and stuff like that. They're like, oh man, I consume like all these eggs and, these big cartons of eggs and things like that. I mean, I rarely eat eggs ever. Like ever. Like, I mean, I'll have it for like, if I go out to like a nice restaurant or something like that for breakfast or whatever, like First Watch, we go grab some eggs. But, for the most part, I am rarely ever eating eggs. I just, it's just not a normal thing for me to just pound 8 eggs in the morning.
It's not a normal thing for anybody to eat 8 eggs, but I am a fan of eating eggs.
Eggs are great. And duck eggs are actually even better, to be honest with you. I like duck eggs better than I like regular eggs. My buddy Chris,
you couldn't eat 8 of them though.
No, they're big and they're really filling. The yolk part of it is just like, really massive, and the whole egg is massive. But one of my friends that lives near me has ducks, and he sends me over duck eggs all the time. And it's crazy because like you can keep them, out, not in the refrigerator, as long as you don't wash them, for like months. They last and they're good for months, which is crazy. But they're delicious.
That's an American thing. Keeping your eggs, you have to keep your eggs in the refrigerator. We don't have to do that over here.
You don't have to do it over here?
No.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You don't put eggs in the refrigerator?
Well, you can, but it's not a necessity.
Are they white?
No.
Yeah. I don't understand why we do white. It's funny because Erin, my wife, will not. She's like, keep those things completely separate from all my other eggs. It's not white. I can't handle it because the eggs aren't white colored. Like, because she's so used to eggs not naturally being white, but not being bleached white basically, it looks more appeasing, I guess, or something. It's the same thing for like American cheese. American cheese should be white cheese, but it's dyed orange because that's what America, I guess, does is they dye it orange so that it's American cheese. But it's just the weird things. Like it works because like when I see white cheese, I'm like, oh, that's not American cheese. I just go right to the orange one. That's American chease. So. Whatever. I mean, it's like how I guess we're raised or whatever.
Not eating the American cheese.
White eggs and orange cheese, it's just like, whatever. But I do like duck eggs, and I will have those occasionally when Chris brings them over, which is awesome. So he's got a bunch of ducks.
I challenge you to eat 8 of them one day. That'd be probably an entire calorie.
I'll try. Let's go. All day. No worries.
Yeah, so that was another piece of advice that I would not recommend doing. As I look back on it, I probably shouldn't have listened to a lot of things that guy said, but here we are.
I think you bring up a really good point, which is there is so much fitness influencers out there or people giving advice that really aren't qualified. And I just want to be, perfectly honest. These types of things, that we talk about, we either do it from our experiences. Hang on a second, my DoorDash.
You get your eggs delivered?
It's my core life for lunch, getting orders. So I have like a 12 and then a 1 and then a 2 and then a 3 and then a 4. So I eat right after we get done with the podcast. I'm eating as I'm on another thing before I actually have to do my part. So you know how those days go. But
yes,
but it's interesting because for when I look at information, it's either something that has worked for me, is backed by science, or somebody that I trust. And I think that's the big issue that I run into is that. I was just talking to somebody today, Eric, my CEO here at Trusted Tech, and he went to the gym recently. He hadn't been in the gym for a while, and he goes in and, there's tripods everywhere. There's people filming themselves. It's like a total shit show everywhere. All these people like, showing them flexing, uploading to TikTok and Instagram. And, these people have literally no training whatsoever or no understanding of nutrition or anything else. And obviously genetics plays a big thing. There was a big post yesterday. I was laughing my ass off. It was this guy that was just absolutely ripped, like jacked. And, big dude, massive, not natural, no question. And, he said, something to the effect of like, all those fitness influencers out there that are saying you need to hit the gym, at least 3 to 5 times a week are total bullshit. I only do it twice a week.
Oh, the twice a week guy. I saw that.
This is my body. Yeah. First of all, he had chicken legs. There's no muscles on his legs at all, which whatever, that's fine. I could, when people make fun of my calves, I'm like, bro, don't even go there. It's genetics. But the guy had no quads either. And then he's got this massive shredded upper body. And he's like, I only go to the gym twice a week. And then the comments were freaking hilarious.
There's millions
obviously
of comments on that.
There's a big thing missing here of what else is helping, but
Yeah, that guy got absolutely roasted because I saw it come up. The guy who shared it he said about, and not to mention something about the use of anabolic steroids or something, and Elon commented under it, and then it was like literally a million comments.
And listen, again, whatever you want to do, totally fine for yourself, but don't be like, hey, if you lift twice a week. And he didn't even talk about like eating proper nutrition or stuff like that. It's just if you lift twice a week and you can look like this. And obviously he left out some very important details there.
I think
that's a trend. That's a trend, right?
Yeah. Well, I think if I think back to the guy that I'm talking about and the advice that I gave him, like he was the biggest person in the gym. I was not. I was skinny, and he was jacked. He was a WBFF pro or whatever it is, WBFF pro. So I was like, he definitely knows what he's talking about. But I would say after sort of number one, getting to know him, number two, seeing how he trained his clients, he was sort of using that title as sort of to build his career around it. And I don't necessarily always believe that those people have the best knowledge about how to do things for other people. Like, yes, does he understand what he needs to do for his body to take it to the levels that he does? Absolutely. Like, he used to get into incredible shape. I'm not taking that away from him by any stretch of imagination, but sort of understand, or I guess if I think back to like how I do things, I try to meet people where they're at or the level that they're at. And like if I started, if I came on to our first call, and I'm like, right, okay, you want to lose a bit of weight, then build muscle, okay, right? I'm going, you need to eat, 350 grams of raw sweet potato per meal. You just tell me to fuck off. Do you know what I mean? It's not a realistic thing to do. So sort of meeting people where they're at. And I think having a sort of sense of, okay, right, this person maybe knows what to do for themselves, but have they any sort of record of actually being able to do it for other people? I think is an important one.
What was the guy's name that you didn't like really well from Australia? He's a fitness trainer, kind of does like YouTube short stuff. Do you remember his name? Is it like James Wood, maybe?
James Smith. He's from the UK, but yeah, he lives in Australia. Yeah.
So, it's interesting because I'll look at a lot of his videos too, and he's got some good ones out there, but I do like one of the way that he frames something, which, he was perfectly honest. And he said, listen, this is me when I was in the gym all the time. And this is when I was taking steroids. And this is what I look like. He's like, I felt like shit. I starved myself. And by the way, I took these pills that basically, I can't remember the name of the pills, clenbuterol, and it caused me to lose all this weight. And I was miserable. And I was eating, 1,500 calories to look this shredded. And, I was kind of destroying my body over time. And so, you look at a lot of these, fitness influencers, one, probably they're in their low 20s, which, fuck. I mean, I would give anything to go back to my low 20s and be able to do the same thing I'm doing now, because the results would be completely different, than being 40 years old. So, first and foremost, being 20 years old and being a fitness influencer, you should not be
being
giving
20 years old is trump card.
Right. Your age definitely has a big component there. But the second piece of it is like, a lot of these, fitness influencers are living, very, not necessarily unhealthy body fat percentages, but things that just aren't sustainable. And they don't look like that all year round. They go through very hardcore cutting phases to get into that type of position. Same thing that bodybuilders do and everybody else, to get those really just crazy popping abs and muscle definition in areas to really shed that body fat percentage. And I think it gives people a very unhealthy view of what's actually possible. And I would argue to say, like, listen, having a bit of fat on you is not a bad thing. That's natural. Our bodies are designed to store fat. Having shredded abs and being 100%, perfect in every regard of what you look at, that's not my goal in any way, shape, or form. I like being lean. I like being able to show muscle definition, but I don't want to get to a point to where like I'm starving my body and I feel like shit all the time, because like, what's the point in that? My whole point is to like live healthier, feel better about myself, have the energy for my kids. And I can tell you, when you hardcore cut, you have no energy whatsoever. None. Zero. You don't want to do shit, and you're angry, you're agitated, you hate life. It sucks.
It does. It sucks. But I will actually. I listened to the Huberman and Andy Galton podcast where they were talking about how he goes about structuring a training block, which I actually really enjoyed the podcast. So you can tell your friends, Andy and Andy, that I enjoyed the podcast.
Yeah, my good friends.
Yeah, good friends, Andy and Andy. But the one thing that he did say, because they were talking about the whole like cutting and bulking thing, and I think it would be known by now, like I don't necessarily love the phrasing of bulking, and I think it's just the sort of the natural thought process that follows it. It's like cheeseburgers and pizzas flat out. And what they were sort of saying is like general population people who are just trying to build a little bit of muscle or build a bit of muscle, they don't need to push those like massive amount of calories to push that, way too much body fat tissue to then have to strip it back off. And I actually saw a post yesterday that Callum, our coach, posted with one of his clients, and he said he's like 5.5 weeks out, or 5.5 weeks left of his quote unquote bulk phase. But they're not, they could probably put on another 10 pounds in that time, obviously assisted, but that would be the first 10 pounds to come off. So sort of having an understand of like, is it actually worth it to do those things, to like, am I going to go up and wait to just then come all the way back down and wait again? So sort of being able to run a little bit closer on both sides of maintenance, whether it's, even if it's up to like 1,000 calories or more over your maintenance, like you don't need to double, triple it. And then the same on the way down, like you don't need to go super under in terms of your calories as well, and being able to balance it out. The James Smith thing, I will say that he is very opinionated in his posts. And I would say he does it for the attention, like to build his following, which has absolutely worked for him. Like he has an incredible following. He's slightly different in like interviews and podcasts. Like he's a totally different person. In fact, So I would say that a lot of that stuff that he puts out is just to grab people's attention because it like sits on the fence. So if he's being a dick about something, then somebody's going to send it to someone else and whatever else. So he's just playing the algorithm probably. He is very transparent about all things, but the thing that I don't necessarily like about what he says about sort of his physique, he almost like gives himself a pass for not trying to get lean. And I'm not ever saying that, you know, coaches or fitness people or whatever he wants to call himself need to be, you know, shredded all the time or massive all the time or whatever. But I definitely do think there needs to be some level of having walked the walk at some point. So you have an understanding of whatever your clients are going through or putting them through or whatever else. And, you know, maybe it is that he just trains people who just want to be the same sort of suit to him. And that's absolutely fine. But I do think there's a part of me that just doesn't like that he gives himself that pass as like, well, this is normal and I'm okay with it. I'm like, that's cool. And that's fine, but you're normalizing it for other people who potentially do want to meal prep or potentially do want to have a six pack for 50% of the year or whatever it is.
You know, and I think those generalizations on certain things, like, you know, you get the stupid stuff around like sumo versus conventional. Well, you know, like
I laugh whenever you talk about that because I've every Jeff Nippard video where he has the Chris Bumstead cardboard cutout in the background and he's calling him a bitch for doing sumo. You know, it's you know, you're on the side of what works best for you, and you won't know that until you try them all. And I've done a lot of conventional deadlifts. I've done heavy conventional deadlifts. I've done, you know, sumo deadlifts. I've done trap bar deadlifts. I've done RDLs. I've done rack pull. You know, like we've done every variation you could possibly imagine of those. And it's just sumo works best for me, my height, you know, and everything else that goes along with it, and my you know, lower left back issues. But like when you start getting into like certain things like that, you know, you're basically saying it has to be my way and there is no other variation. And that's what I really dislike about the fitness community, is that you have a lot of people that aren't flexible in their methodologies around, you know, what they're talking about. And it's like, it has to be empirically this or that. You have to do it this way, or, you know, based on me and how I feel, it needs to be done this way. And, you know, it's funny because there's one of the guys that went on Huberman's podcast. I'll find his name before we get off. But he was on the podcast, and, you know, he had a great podcast and talked, you know, a lot about muscle hypertrophy and everything else that was going on, and solid interview. And, you know, it's funny because like you'll see him just rage out on people that are talking about things that are how they feel, don't have any experience in whatsoever, you know, or don't have the backings of what the actual science says. And like, I think one of his comments back to somebody that was like challenging him on something was like, you know, basically F your feelings. It's completely irrelevant. This is what the science says. So shut up, you know, like, you know, and it's like literally like it. And, you know, we've heard that term, like the science says this, and, you know, I understand some folks are, you know, skeptical and whatnot, whatever, but like some of these are like literally how our bodies work. And we have some great data on it, and it's been proven over, you know, thousands of years of evolution and, you know, scientific studies and research. So like, you know, it was like one of those things where you're like, okay, like, you know, how you feel means that's your feelings. That's fine, but it has nothing in context to what I said. And so, you know, it makes, you know, it's just, I think a lot of fitness influencers, you know, say it has to be done this way, or this is the way you have to do it because it's worked for me. And the way that it works for you may not work for everybody else, right? With information on the internet. Like for a long time, I just thought everybody on the internet was a dick. And maybe that's not the best way to put it, but I think
Dr. Lane Norton, by the way, Dr. Lane.
Oh
Norton.
Yeah. He is very
hilarious to follow.
He
is hilarious to follow.
He just doesn't take any shit. But yeah, I think the sort of misinformation online is just people who have had success with something that then, you know, it's almost like cult, like that this is the way you have to do it, and come and join my cult because this is the way it have to be. And I don't necessarily think that well, I don't think that that's the way to do it. But again, maybe that's me going against all of that. But I think for me, what I try and do is, like I said, meet people where they're at and have an understanding of sort of what they've been through and what their struggles are, and find out what works for them. And I think, again, you know, the fitness industry is a strange place, truth be told. But I think everybody's trying to sort of make their own mark, and everybody's trying to be like, not everybody, but the majority of people who are trying to do these extreme things are trying to like, well, no, this is the way that I do it with my clients, and this is the way to do it, and that's it. Whereas the stuff like the science hasn't really changed on like how your body works, or, you know, how to lose fat or how to gain muscle. Like that's pretty much stayed consistent as far as I know. Yeah. And I don't necessarily think that it needs to be rewritten. I would rather just do the basic stuff and be consistent with it and do it that way than sort of trying to reinvent things. And I think that oftentimes people want the big secret or what the new latest sexy thing is online and whatever else. And it's like, that necessarily isn't the, you know, if you're happy enough just to do boring stuff consistently and tick the boxes, like that's probably the best way to succeed. That's literally what's going to make you successful. What do I need to do? Go for a walk, lift weights, eat proper food. Like it was
interesting. We were, you know, I'm part of a group called Vistage, which is a bunch of CEOs that get together once a month and peers in our industry. And we talk about business and struggles that we have, or, you know, experiences they may have, you know, that maybe I don't or whatever. And it's just been great for me because, you know, as an entrepreneur, you know, I have no fucking clue what I'm doing. You know, like I'm learning as I go along, right? You know, now granted, I'm doing well because I got 2 successful businesses and multiple other ones, right? And so things are going good. But like at the end of the day,
still,
like it's just
still have no idea what
it's just YOLO. It's 100% YOLO, right? You only live once, right? And so, you know, but you know, to everybody out there, you know, when I started a business, I had no idea what I was doing. Like I had no clue. I didn't know how to start an LLC or why I should go an LLC versus a C Corp, what my SLAs needed to look like. I just knew that I was really good at hacking stuff. And I knew that if I was really good at hacking stuff and I could talk about hacking stuff, I could probably sell hacking stuff, right? And so like, you know, that turned into trusted second binary defense, right? And, you know, but the same concept can be applied to health and fitness too, which is, hey, I'm interested in being healthy. Sounds good to me. I think it could be healthy. So now what do I need to do it? And it's starting off small. And, you know, a company like Trusted Sec doesn't grow overnight. Now, if Dave from, you know, 11 years in the future was to talk to Dave 11 years back in the past, he'd be like, oh my God, you know everything about business. I'd be like, dude, like I just figured it out as you go along. Like, yeah, I know what LLC is. Yeah, you just go to this site here, you go do this, and here's how you structure your metrics and consulting. And, you know, at the same time, I can still hack, but I can also run a business. So, you know, our experiences, I think, really forge us. And I think the biggest issue, you know, in the health and fitness industry is that there's just so many people saying that it has to be done this way, or that the way that you're doing it is wrong. It's what works best for you, and it's what works best. You know, Zach Strength is another good example. You know, Zach Strength on social media, if you haven't followed him, he's a great guy. He's hilarious to follow. The dude just eats eggs and steak all day long, and butter. Egg, steak, and butter. That's the only thing he eats.
He probably eats 8 eggs a day.
Oh my God, way more than 8 eggs. No, he eats like 30 eggs a day. And that's all he eats. He does more like the ketogenic, you know, type of stuff. And you know what? He's shredded. He's big. He's got energy. He lifts all the time. He's consistent, and that works for him. Yeah. You know, and so, you know, who's to say that that's wrong? And so he gets, you know, a ton of shit online for people. Like some guy, the last one that totally, like, I laughed my ass off. And what I like about Zach is like, I don't have enough time for that. Like I got kids. I don't need to deal with other kids online. So I just block people or mute them. Like, I just don't pay attention because I'm like, just, if you're going to be negative, just go away. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. Like, you're just an angry person in life. It could give me 2 shits less. You're not going to ruin my day. But Zach, you know, like feeds them and goes after him and goes back and forth, which is freaking hilarious. And the last one that I thought was really good was, you know, I bet this dude couldn't even deadlift 500 pounds. And then there's a video of Zach like an hour later doing, you know, 505 pounds, you know, for like 8 reps. And he's like, hey, let's see your photo. And the guy went dead silent, right? He never responded back, you know, just whatever, you know, but, you know, people just have this perception that the way that I do this is the right way. And I need to tell you that you're doing it the wrong way. When in fact, most of this stuff is building on foundation, learning, and finding out what works for you. Like a good example, tricep extensions, right? There's 70 different people that tell you 70 different ways to do tricep extensions with a rope, right? So, you know, Ben will tell you use 2 ropes. I prefer 2 ropes because I'm taller. It lets me get a better find. But, you know, other people doing 1 rope will tell you to bend over and kind of hunch back and go sideways like this. Other people will say stay more consistent up here and whatever. At the end of the day, if you start to get that mind-muscle connection, and as you start to get better consistency, you're going to figure out what works best for you. So it's not to say that the ways that you're doing things are right or wrong. It's that it may be modified slightly for your height, your weight, your progress, your advancements, you know, mind muscle connection. All of those things make a big difference. And the same thing on nutrition. You know, you may like avocados. I may hate avocados.
Do you enjoy avocados?
Right. And I don't. But it doesn't mean that because you love avocados and I don't, that I'm going to be unhealthy and I'm going to be overweight because I don't eat avocados, right? And some people will be like, no, if you don't eat avocados, you're never going to be strong. Well, what the does that have anything to do with it? I get my macronutrients from other places. Avocados doesn't mean I'm going to suck ass at everything I do in life. So some moderation around this I think is important. And
that's the biggest problem. The fitness industry is not moderated, and it's just a fucking free for all, the whole thing. And I actually think that it maybe was Dr. Liam Norton, and he said, because they're talking about like who to take advice from or who to listen to because it's such a shit show. And I think he pretty much what he said was, if someone's given you a definite, don't listen to them. Because
that was a great comment, because he said, like, dude, he's like, when I don't know something, I don't like pretend I know it. I just say I don't know that, or hey, I'm not familiar with that study, or I'm not familiar with this. Like, know what you know what you don't know, right? That's important. Because if you're giving somebody some shit advice,
especially
you can screw their whole life up,
especially with their health. And
that's what concerns me with a lot of these personal trainers online. And while I love you, Ben, like, it was really Russian roulette with you. It really, we talked about this before on the podcast, but what happens if you were a total shit coach? You didn't care about anybody. All you cared about was the money, and you weren't experienced, and you're just you're feeding me a bunch of calories. I'm like, holy shit, I'm eating a bunch of calories. Cool. I'm getting heavier, but you're like, oh, everything's good. You're doing great. Look at those progress photos. Oh my God, you're feeding me a bunch of bullshit. And then I completely fail at everything I'm doing, and I'm 2 years set back, and I'm like, I'm worse off than I was when I started. But that's this industry, right? You got to be really careful about people you listen to, who you use as trainers, the information you get them from. Like, all that stuff is so important for your success. And, I think surrounding yourself with a community of people that have success also helps. Obviously, the Hacking Your Health crew is the best, but but
it's funny because
it's important.
I don't really follow many like other coaches or PTs. Like, the people that I speak to are Matt, who essentially is a mentor at the minute, and then and Helmy. And Matt was actually saying something the other day. Someone was giving him a hard time about something he said on a podcast, and he was like, how the fuck do these people have the time to give a shit about what I'm doing? Like, you should be so busy running your own race that you've no idea what anybody else is doing. And the reason that I mentioned Helmy is because that it depends thing, that if anybody ever asks me a question, the answer is always it depends, and I'll follow with something else. But whenever we were training yesterday, I was like, I've got to do these setup videos for clients, because they've asked, like, how to set up the Smith machine, how to set up the bench, how to set up, get into dumbbell press and whatever else. So I give him this big list, and he's like, read through it. There's maybe like 20 things on the list. And he was like, right, okay, but who for? I was like, fuck. I forgot that, like, there's no, especially with Helmy, like, there's no, like, we can't just do it generically, because it's like, well, how long are their arms in comparison to this, and like what way? And I'm like, it's going to be a long day of filming tomorrow. But that essentially is why he is such a good coach, because he takes all of those things into consideration. So, that it depends, and being so specific to the person. And I mean, if you think about the title of the job at its like basic form, it's personal trainer. Like, the personal bit is the first bit of it. And I think if you're not having that, I realize that this is a total tangent on the podcast, but if you're not getting that personal bit, then I think that that's probably a problem in itself.
Yeah. And I think, to wrap up and kind of summarize what we're talking about here, right, is, listen,
don't eat 8 eggs for breakfast. Cook your vegetables.
You don't need to eat 8 eggs, but if you want to eat 8 eggs, and that fits in with your caloric, macro counts of what you're trying to accomplish for me, we're okay with that, but it's not to say that one size fits all, or one box goes in any. Just because I don't eat 8 eggs doesn't mean you can't eat 8 eggs or avocados or whatever. When it comes down to it, understanding what you're putting into your body, the food content, the quality of the food is extremely important. The types of food you eat is extremely important. When you eat food is extremely important. Having the basics around nutrition, having the consistency around your weight program, what works. Everybody's like, oh my God, I want a gym like yours. I'll never be as big as you because I don't have that gym. No. Like I could be exactly the same size as I am today with just dumbbells, and some weight, some free weights, right? A bench and a bar and some other things is going to be sufficient enough. It's so I don't get bored as hell, lifting in there, and I can just keep rotating stuff, right? So, at the end of the day, like, it's not to say that the equipment that I ordered is the best equipment to go and get. It's that, it's what works best for us, or, who we are. So, anything you can take away from this is that you're going to get fed some bullshit that you believe sometimes. And, you just got to be able to course correct when that is bullshit, and be able to, figure out why that didn't work, or is it total bullshit in the first place? Or if it didn't work for that person, if it didn't work for you and it worked for that person, well, move to something different that's going to work for you in your plan and your routine. But it all comes down to, having a goal for yourself, being consistent with it so you can get to that goal, and making changes to course correct. It's the same thing I did with Trusted Sec and Binary Defense. When I started Trusted Sec, I never thought I'd have 150 people. I never thought I'd be, a national, or, global company and have a headquarters and, all this other stuff. I was in the basement of my house with twins upstairs yelling and screaming bloody murder. Right. So, it's one of those things that, as time progresses, your vision of something may mature or grow even larger than you ever anticipated. I never thought I'd be in this position from a health perspective. I never thought it was possible for a 40-year-old to be, where I'm at and being in the best shape of my life, but it is. And it continues to change every day what my objectives are. So it's building on that, building on your foundation, building on a good foundation, and then measuring the successes with what you're doing because it's consistent.
Agree. For anybody who's listened this far, let us know, tweet us if you're team avocado or team no avocado, because Dave feels very strongly about this. As always, thanks for listening. Find us at WeHackHealth on all social media platforms. Share us with your friends. #WeHackHealth. See you in the Discord. Catch you next week.
See y'all next week.